So this part of my talk is to tell you what cladograms are. So a cladogram, or what's also known sometimes as a phylogenetic tree. Okay, and this is a diagram that attempts to show the evolutionary relationships, evolutionary relatedness of different species. Through time. And it's often based on, the early cladograms were based on anatomical characteristics, right? Similarities in structures on the body, characteristics, sorry. But as we really got good with DNA and biochemistry, we started using that instead. So often the ones that you'll see are based on comparisons of DNA sequences or amino acid sequences. Usually using a very, very conserved gene or protein that everybody has, that can therefore be compared more easily. All right, so given that, let me just stick with the kingdoms that we just talked about, and I'm going to kind of draw for you a diagram that shows not just how they, where they appeared on the timeline, but who is related to who, and who came from who, and who emerged from who, kind of like that. And you who are lucky enough to be here in the room are seeing my picture that I'm actually going to be using on the whiteboard right in front of me. That's pretty much it, what I'm about to draw right there. Okay, so I'm going to draw it like this because I feel like it makes more sense. My cladogram that I'm about to draw, or my phylogenetic tree, I'm turning the timeline on its side. So now this is the present, and this is the past. This is 3.5 billion years ago, right? I'm turning it upside down like that. And here's the first prokaryotic cell. Here's the first prokaryotic cell. And what happens is there is the very first divergence off of this tree leads to the eubacteria, right? Which include E. coli and Streptococcus and lots of the common bacteria, very common bacteria that are prokaryotic, right? But they have a common ancestor with the Archaebacteria. Archaebacteria go over here, and they also make it up to the present. The Archaebacteria also are still with us. They're up here. The Archaebacteria. But they branch off because here, some of them went in a different direction or got exposed to a different environment and went through endosymbiosis. To produce the first eukaryotes. Right? First eukaryotes are here. We know that we're more closely related to the Archaebacterians than to the Eubacterians. There's a whole list of biochemical similarities between Archaeans and eukaryotic cells that are in the rest of the kingdoms for us to know that this common ancestor here is actually with the Archaeans and not with the Eubacterians. So the first eukaryotes then give you kingdom Protista. kingdom Protista, which also went its own way and did just fine and is still with us. We still have amoebas, we still have parameciums, we still have all those guys. But protistans were an origin for lots of the other life that came along next. So protistans, there were some protistans that evolved to be a bit fungi-like. And there's still some of their ancestors are also still with us. Some of the protistans evolved to be more plant-like. And some of them were more animal-like. And those guys still exist amongst the protistans that are with us today. The amoebas are very animal-like. No cell wall, they ooze along. They don't have chloroplasts in them. There are algae cells, like the ones floating in there. Cyanobacteria, not cyanobacteria, but chlorella and other single-celled algae is very plant-like. And there are fungi-like protists, but I think slime mold would be included. The slime mold is a very fungi-like protist that led to the true fungi, right? But these guys then became multicellular. They all achieved multicellularity, right? That multicellularity happened right here, right about 0.5 billion years ago, when all of life exploded into diversity. And they became the true fungi and the plants, the advanced plants, and the animals that are with us today. Okay, so that's not a whole lot of concepts, but here's what you can see. You can see these nodes that I drew along the way, and I want to talk about what they mean exactly. So right here, and right here, and this whole thing here are common ancestors. These are common ancestors. This is a common ancestor of the eubacterians and all of these other organisms. It's a common ancestor for all of them. All of us, every single living thing on the planet, including bacteria, have some common ancestor that branched off. Some of them just stayed in the bacterial world and didn't change and didn't evolve and are now the eubacteria that we have still in the world today. Some of them branched off and were archaeans, right, which are actually kind of different, have different things in their cell walls. Some of them went through endosymbiosis and gained a nucleus and gained mitochondria and gained the ability to be a bit more complex and maybe do some aerobic respiration and some photosynthesis and some other things that the bacteria couldn't do. And so you have a common ancestor protistan. We don't know what that little guy looked like, but that protistan gave rise to some single cells that were fungi-like, that maybe had chitin in their cell walls instead of other things. Plant-like, that had cellulose in their cell walls and used chlorophyll to do photosynthesis, or who had no cell walls at all and were very motile and could move around, and eventually when they organized into more than one cell and formed real bodies, we have the main three kingdoms most of us know the most about on the planet, right? So there are common ancestors for all of these places where big divergences happened, right? So I think I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to go and let Mr. Anderson talk for just a few minutes because he explains this really well.